Yes, good afternoon, Chief Wales. Good afternoon, Master Fawolizo. Good afternoon, Nigerian chess community members. It's a really rare privilege to have this opportunity to share with you from my little place of knowledge. I was very fortunate to be the first person to open these lectures, and it actually turned out well. Uh, my motivation then was majorly the support. As you can see in the background, my support system is very much still with me, even though she now resides in heaven. So I believe it's a project of carrying on for us, because these are some of the things we love. She knows all the chess players. They all know her. You all know her. Yeah. You remember when you people gave her um for the honor of 1 minute silence when she passed, even in the Southwest tournament and many other programs. So, talking about endgame mastering or mastering your endgame, with Master Lizzo and Chief Wales, we plan to have this like series. A series in the sense that from time to time we'll get to be doing different lectures on this and helping our chess players to understand that the whole idea of chess is war, it's to win. So while you're busy learning your openings, your middle games, tactics, and strategies, you should also know that there's a very important aspect of chess, which is the end game. The end game is a place where everything has already gotten bad, right? So you're trying to pull yourself together, hold everything together, and see how you can force a win out of the situation you find yourself. Uh, like Tunde Onokoya, some people call him the chess king. Some of his fans call him the chess king. Like he used to tell me many years back, he used to tell me that my strongest point as a chess player lies in my end game. So I took that to heart, and I got to realize that the more we go into the end games, no matter who my opponent is, the stronger I seem to appear. But for the purpose of this lecture, I'm going to be starting with how not to play the end game. How not to play the end game. Because you can see from the first game you can see here, it's a game between myself and Candidate Master Omore Benjamin. He was then rated 22-12. And the game happened in round 4 on board 5 of the Positive Minds Chess Tournament in Abuja. That was in the year 2015. Before I delve into the game, important that we all know three very important things about chess end games. There are three very, very important aspects of the chess end games. You have domination. In the end game, you have to dominate. How many spaces, how much space can you deprive your opponent of? That's domination. You know, restriction. Be able to restrict your opponent. After dominating those spaces, you have to also be able to restrict your opponent from access to reclaiming those spaces. I don't know if I'm speaking in simple language, but I believe it should be simple enough. And then, after dominating and restricting, you're also to combine something, and it's called opposition. That is, if you want to abbreviate this, you have DRO, domination, restriction, and opposition. You would find out that in king and pawn versus king endgame, provided the king that has the pawn has the opposition, it's a one endgame for that king. But the moment the king does not have that opposition, it becomes very difficult for the king to get the end game. I am it's a master class, so I don't think I should bore the attendees, or should I say the students in this class, with elementary endgame concepts, I think I should just delve right into the crux of the matter. So this is a game that was played in 2015. I want to start with, because in my lectures I like starting from what you should not be found doing. What you should not be found doing. In the end game, you don't want to go into an end game where you are struggling, we don't have an idea of what is even going on and all that. This particular game was played in 2015, and this particular game was played in 2015. I was white. Everybody that knows Ben Omorere knows that is a highly respected candidate master. He even won a medal at the recent National Sports Festival, as tough as the field was. Everybody that knows him knows how resilient he can be. In this game, this was the popular game, my biggest loss of 2015. It was supposed to be like one of the very best games of 2015. If only I could have found a mate in 11. We played the Scandinavian. Everybody that knows Ben Omorere, Coach Ben Omorere, know that he loves to play the Scandinavian. You know, I brought my nights out. So we are talking about the end game here, right? So this was my threats. These were the things I was trying to come up with. I left my pawn hanging. He couldn't touch it. So I did the sack, right? I was supposed to find mate here. A way to find mate here would have been to just say check, the king comes up, you know, check. The king eats this. This is just the variation anyway. And I eat here. I capture this pawn, and he has to find a way, he has to find a way to get out of this mess, because there's this move. It's there. Move is there, you know. And before you know what's happening, it's a very it's a very nasty king hunt that happens, and there will soon be mate on board from this position, obviously. So let's not go into that. Anyways, out of fear for what was happening in the position, I panicked, right? And instead of going for the queen f7 check, I went for castle queen side. So I panicked because of who I was playing against, and missed a very important mate in 11. Very, very simple queen king hunt that should have resulted in mating. So he came for exchange. I still thought I had mate. I still believed I had mate. At this point, I I still believed I had mate. You won't believe that I still believed I had mate. From my next few moves, you will see that I'm still thinking I have mate. Still feel I have mate, but there's nothing like mate here. There's an advantage, but there's no checkmate here. So I was thinking I could do rook check, like rook up here. But then I was scared of this move, right? Okay. So we are approaching the end game. We're approaching the end game. The problem I have now is I am messed up mentally. I'm busy thinking about checkmate that I just blew away, and I'm just pissed off right now. This singular move spoils all the plans. So I come here, he takes the pawn, take the rook. Now we are in the end game, right? We're in the end game. In this position, I'm still thinking about the checkmate that I have, and I'm pissed off. So I'm just making moves that I think I should still be winning. I'm just making moves that I feel I should still be winning. Now, interestingly, in this end game, I have the bishop pair, right? I'm not supposed to be able to lose this game. But because psychologically and mentally, I was still focused on the checkmate that I missed, became an emotional wreck. And I could not really transfer myself into the reality that we are now in the end game. So my opponent was focused on diffusing the queen side. As you can see, the queen side pawns, he wants to have them, these pawns on the queen side, he wants to have them liquidate themselves, while this is going to be the pawn he will protect to get to queen here. And how does he achieve that? He achieves that by coming for exchange. He achieves that by coming for exchange. Watch how he does it. He knows I can't give my bishop for a pawn right now. He knows I can't do that. So he boldly pushes it out of there. You see, we're talking about domination, and we are talking about restriction, and we are also talking about opposition. You can see that the black king already has the opposition here. He has dominated everywhere, made my pieces, my bishop pair, to be useless. He's now attacking my light squared bishop. Perhaps if he can take my light squared bishop out, then he has higher chances of these pawns not needing anybody. These pawns here, he wouldn't need anybody to bother about anybody attacking them, and he would just continue with his winning plans. I, I tried to fight. Obviously, at this point, I was battling and grappling with the reality that I could possibly lose this game. At this point, it was beginning to dawn on me gradually that I was losing this game at this point. He quickly came to exchange the light squared bishop, like I told you. Why did he do that? He did that because that's his surest way to victory. And I mistakenly, still being in that illusion that I could draw, I came for the exchange. Thinking, see how I'm making his life easy. I don't even know what I was thinking at this point. He refused to take any of the pawns because he felt I could trap his knight back there. He didn't want to take the pawn because he was avoiding the trap of the knight, and the trap of the knight he feared was going to prevent this pawn from going freely. You could see the opposition. His king has entered the opposition. From this point on, it's just lost. It's just lost for white. Now, a game where you have mate in 11 and you miss mate in 11, psychologically, you don't get to recover throughout the game. And you end up losing that game. This game lasted for about 5 hours. Lasted for about 4 to 5 hours. I recall after this game that myself and Coach Ben, we didn't even have the strength to play our next game, which was round 5. He just quit. He just From here it was just hell for me, and I lost. Fine. So now the moral of the story is that in chess, a lot of times we have advantages, and we kind of throw away these advantages, but psychologically, in the heat of the moment, we are not able to snap out of that uh, situation that has already passed. Joshua Whiteskin calls it maintaining presence. You need to maintain presence. You need to always be present in the moment. You need to be able to snap out of whatever thoughts, deep thoughts that you are having that are irrelevant to what is happening on the board at that particular point in time. And you need to be able to make the conscious decision that the position requires. Coach Ben lost his next round because he said, like he told me, he was very drained from this game, the mental torture. In fact, his clock kept going to 30 seconds, 30 seconds, while at the point of excitement, I was just playing so fast without analyzing deeply before I got into the point of starting to think, frustration setting, and I eventually lost the game. From this moment, it's not it's very it's lost for White at this point because this king has to go down, this pawn falls, the knight and the queen, and the game is over. So that was 2015, practically about 10 years ago, and that game made me to become a very good friend of Coach Ben Omorere, and he also became a very good big friend. So we shook hands, became good friends, learned a lot, and we were both better for it. So I'm going to look at another game right now. This particular game is going to have a lot of interesting ideas, and the whole thing behind the game is how to play the end game with anger. I think that's what this game should talk about. How to play the end game with anger. So this particular game, like I was telling you people on the national group, this game was played in C4. That's CPAN Chevron Chess Challenge of the year 2014. Because the inaugural C4 happened in 2013, but you know, 2014 we now had the second edition, which was the first one I attended. Now, this particular game, in this position, opponent had just chopped one of my pawns, so he was a pawn up. But he made a very interesting move in this position. He pushed his pawn up here, and that was a blunder, right? So he quickly, when he saw that it was a blunder, before dropping it, because the queen dies for free. The queen gets killed for free, or captured for free. That's the appropriate word to use. So he quickly returned the pawn, and I shouted, "Tush!" My opponent refused to accept that he touched the pawn, and we got into an argument. We had to call the arbiter. The arbiter eventually said it was your word against mine, and so they had to play on, and that if I was not okay with that decision, I would have to protest in writing after the game. So I was very angry, and even though I was a pawn down, I told myself that if I was going to play on, I was going to play aggressively and win the game. So my opponent played rook A to B8 instead, and I played queen takes E7, played queen takes, and I played rook takes, and he attacked my rook. We are in the end game, right? You will all agree that we are in the end game, right, Chief Wales?
Yes, we are.
Okay, fine. Now I have a B2 pawn hanging. I have my opponent just attacked my rook, so my bishop took, and he took with his rook. And then I took on a pawn. I'm temporarily up ahead in material now. My opponent attacked my bishop, and I brought my bishop here, attacking both his rook and his bishop, for which he had to play this, and I played this. Now he ate rook takes f5. He captured on rook takes f5. And I played a very silent but deadly move. What do I mean by silent but deadly? Silent but deadly in the sense that I didn't want him to, one reason in rook end games like this, that's where you get into another concept of chess. Deadly in the sense that I'm threatening rook down here, rook to e8 check. I'm threatening rook to e8 check, after which he has to take the rook, and then I check him, sending his king to this h7 square, which is a very nasty square to send his king to. And then my rook will now belong behind his pass pawns. If you are aware of endgame principles, one of the endgame principles is that rooks belong behind pawns, passed pawns, whether your own pawn or your opponent's pawn. So there's no passed pawn in this position anyway, but rook naturally belongs behind your opponent's pawns, because if your rook can go behind your opponent's pawn, the pressure becomes intense. And with that pressure getting intense, you discover that with time your opponent will get to collapse. And when your opponent collapses, one or two mistakes now happen. My opponent in this game thought the worst was over. He had no idea that he was playing someone that had very strong anger issues, should I say. So he brought his king out, and rooks belong behind passed pawns, behind pawns, as the principle says. So this last move by white shows his plans. I am multiplying attacks. There's attack here. There's the possibility of this move coming, this rook coming here to bear pressure on the f7 pawn and all that. He has his own attack as well. He can come in, but the problem is I am the one invading first, and that's where the concept of opposition comes in. He had to defend that pawn, and then I made another silent, very deadly move. This move threatens checkmate. If this rook was to come here, for instance, this comes here, and then there's checkmate on the board. It's silent, but it's deadly. So the whole idea behind me making this move, rook to c1, was to threaten checkmate. 1, 2, to enable me to block the invasion of his own rook into my back rank. While I have already invaded his back rank, I'm preventing him from invading my own back rank. I told you that endgame principles, we're talking about domination, restriction, and opposition. So rook c1 for me was a restricting move. So my opponent, understanding that there is problem, played g6, pawn to g6. Fine, he played pawn to g6. I brought my rook up. My aim has been achieved. There's pressure here, there's pressure here. My rook is up. There's really no pressure on me like there is on my opponent. So he played h5. I played g3 so that my king can come up and so that I can also advance my pawns. And my opponent played g4. I was like, is he joking? Where is he going to? You might be tempted to want to rush and come and start attacking the pawn by bringing your rook up here and all that. Those kind of moves are premature. You know, you have to learn the concept of playing like waiting moves. So in this position, I said, let me trigger more hostilities, more threats, and let me see. You know, the threat is mightier than the execution, according to Joshua Whitekin. So I brought my rook to b7, attacking the b4 pawn, and my opponent quickly played a5. So my opponent playing a5, I could easily come here and attack this, and one must die. But I decided to bring my king up. The reason I decided to bring my king up instead of making that move was because I had some other ideas of my own, which were protecting this f2 pawn from falling eventually if I throw caution to the wind and I start going after his own pawns. Because I know it must have been a mistake on my part, because this was 11 years ago. I should easily have just played this rook here, and then this pawn, they are all under attack. but my consciousness was pushing me towards this area. I had a feeling that the king side was where the decider of the game was going to be. So anyways, I played I played rook to b7, he played a5. I brought my king up, he brought his king up. I could also still play rook to b5 in this position. I could also still play rook to b5 in this position. But at the end of the day, I felt like it was going to give me, I was going to lose a positional grip on my opponent that I was strangling in anger. Because if I play rook here, he would have to leave that pawn alone by maybe coming up here, coming up. Oh, no, that's a bad move. That's a very bad move, because coming up here, he gives me the opportunity to double my rooks. If he comes up here, I can double my rooks and then just sweep up everywhere. Sweep up everywhere here. He checks for that matter, and that is loss for him. I think I should have done that on hindsight, but you could see I don't like to analyze my games with engines, especially my end games, because eventually when you've exhausted your thinking process, then you can look into the engine and see what they have to say. It helps you to build stronger mental capacity if you can analyze on your own. I felt I had a positional grip. Looking at this game in hindsight, I know that rook b5 was the correct move to make. On 2 occasions, it presented itself with devastating consequences for my opponent, but I didn't make them because I felt I had a better move in mind. I came back here, it was weaker, and he brought his rook up. So I came for this exchange, believing that this rook can't come here, right? This rook coming here, this pawn falls, and then I'm threatening to bring my rook into the position. Instead of g4, if he was to play this pawn falls decisively, and I'm threatening to bring this rook into the position as well. So he wouldn't have anything reasonable to play, and that was what gave me the idea of playing a4 in the position. So my opponent quickly played g4, and when he played g4, I took on g4. He took. I came here with my rook to c4, and this is where the game gets interesting. You will get to learn a very interesting variation of endgame maneuvers from here. He brought his rook to g5, and my next move, rook to f4. And what was the idea behind rook to f4? I was attacking this f7 pawn. Like I told you, my whole tactic, should I say, my whole strategy for this endgame was going after this weak f7 pawn indirectly, putting pressure on it and focusing on seeing how I could eliminate that pawn. Because I felt if I could eliminate that pawn and have my own f2 pawn, that would be the win for me. That was what I had in mind. That was why I was so fixated on it, to the point that I missed rook to b5 like 2 times on the board. Fine. He quickly ate the pawn, captured the rook, on f4 without thinking. I captured back. Can you see the winning combination for black? Now, first of all, in this position, my opponent must move his rook away. And if he moves his rook to a place like this, I simply step my king up. And you can see things are falling apart. This is falling apart. This is falling apart. This cannot hold. And it's just devastating. My opponent brought his rook because he was afraid of locking his rook up in the corner. He brought his rook to d5 instead. And I simply just moved my king up. King up. He thought he was defending. And then I made this interesting move. King to h4. And that's the whole idea. The time it would take my opponent to go after this f2 pawn is enough time for me to gobble up this a5 pawn, gobble up this f5 pawn, and gobble up this g4 pawn. Let's watch how it plays out. He came here. I checked first of all. I came here, attacking the pawn itself. Now, if he brought his rook back, for instance, I have this move. Check. The king moves away. I have this. And then if he takes, I have the opposition. The pawn falls, and at the end of the day, my doubled pawns will help me to gain some time in the end game. If we were to go into this end game, he has fought for the opposition. Fine. He has fought for the opposition. I simply do this to buy time for myself. He comes, I come here. He comes here. I simply do this to buy time for myself. You know? Check. He has to go into the corner or go this way. After which I just move this pawn. Let's say he comes here. I move this pawn. He has to move away. Then I enter the position. I'm won. So I checked. He came here. He captured the a4 pawn. And like I said, at this point, the game plays itself out. I captured this pawn. He thought he could go for this pawn, right? Rook a2. I simply captured this pawn. And he captured this. And I captured this. Now, like I told you earlier, the time it would take him to go after those my useless pawns, the a4 pawn and the f2 pawn, was enough time for me to gobble up his 3 pawns, his connected pawns on f5 and g4 and his a5 pawn. And from here on, the game just plays itself out. Why did I go king e6 first? I went king e6 because I knew a check was going to come. But I didn't, if I had gone king f6, he would have had rook check, and then he will still be buying himself some time. Now look at how my rook has cut off his king to the 8th rank, and he helps me in this endgame, because if his king was not cut off into this 8th rank, the probability of winning this pawn, except I find myself in a Lucina position. You can go and read up Lucina position and learn more about it. Yeah, it will be difficult for me to win. He checked, I came in, and this is the whole idea. Push the pawn. Check. I needed the king to leave the queen in square so that my king can now go in. Again, I repeated the same idea, because this pawn is already guarding the e6 square. His king is far away. I repeated the same idea. So if I'm checked, like I was checked, then I now come back into position. I checked him again, forcing him into an awkward square again, cutting him off away from the line of action. You know, now the proper thing to do in this position is to come to a place like this. Now, what do you achieve by coming to a place like this? You are cutting the king off from the 7th rank, and as well as from the king side. So you can always play this move. Whatever he plays, let's say he chooses to come to this place, you can always come back with your king here. He will now want to see how he can come and check you again. What do? You simply come down, giving your king space to breathe. If he checks, you cover. He has to move away, and once he moves away, you can come here. You know, he can't cross over. That's the whole idea. He can't cross over. You're the only one that can cross over, and it's a clear win from here, because the king becomes useless. The black king becomes useless, and you know what happens from then on. So the game happened to end shortly after, because I played king f8 in this position. He came close. I brought my pawn. He came there. Yeah, I checked him. He came away. I had to cut him off. So, because I was low on time in this position, I remember that game very well. So many people were watching. I checked him. He came back. I checked him again. That was a wrong move. I should have just simply played. In this position, I should have just simply played rook here. And with that move, the win is secured, because if he decides to bring his king closer, I simply come up here with my king. There is no check for me here. It's not possible. If he comes to pin my pawn, I simply check the king. He has to move away. And the moment he moves away, I come here and I queen. So this was an example of playing the end game with anger. So many ideas, but all those ideas combined together to push an agenda. And the agenda was to grind the win by force from my opponent, which I achieved. Before the end of this lecture, I would like to give the last class, should I say, the last class before the end of this lecture, which is let me get the game. It's a game I played against at the time he was Nigeria #1. He was also Nigeria's national chess champion, and it was an end game that had me playing very, very incredible chess. I was happy to be able to play that level of chess. I was happy to be able to play that level of chess, and I was happy to be able to play that level of chess, and I was happy to be able to play that level of chess, and I thank God that it eventually resulted in a win. I thank God that it eventually resulted in a win. The game has a lot of ideas. I don't know why this is proving out. Okay. The game has a lot of ideas, and it has a lot one can learn. So I'm pasting the PGN now and I'm importing the game. Fine. This game is a game I owe to FM Faulizo, because while preparing for this particular round, it was round 5 or round 6. Round 6 of the African Zonals in 2022 in Togo. I had no idea what to play as white. I was white, and I am International Master Femi Balogun was black. He was the national champion at that time, the reigning national champion, and I knew he was going to play the King's Indian defense as black, and he would play it without even batting an eyelid. So I had to come up with something that would take him out of his repertoire. So Master Faulizo came to the rescue and recommended this samish variation of the King's Indian. It's more like the Vladimir Kopian variation, because he's the one that promoted it anyways. It's a not samish, point of correction, Smyslov variation. Smyslov variation. Smyslov was the 7th world champion. So this is the whole idea. Normally others will play e4 in this position, and you get into the standard King's Indian. But Master Faulizo was of the opinion that Femi Balogun has read it all up, he has eaten it all up, and he has prepared for it. So when I played e3, I recall how uncomfortable International Master Femi Balogun became, because it was not business as usual. So he from this point he started improvising. This is all still part of the opening idea. Anyway, before I continue with this, it turns out that this was my only classical chess victory over International Master Femi Balogun. But in that same year, we ended up playing this same opening 3 times. I won this first one. The second time was in South in Uyo, which I got an advantage out of the opening in the middle game, and I couldn't handle my advantage properly. And as slippery as he's known to be, he slipped away, and he ended up taking the whole point. The next time was at the National Chess Championship in 2022, same year. We played the same opening. I was white again, incidentally. I still got an advantage. And Eventually, he slipperily found his way out and was able to take away the whole point, because I think I was not even in the best state of mind for that championship. As you may all recall, I finished with half over 9. So into the game, so many, it's still part of the whole opening idea. From here on, I guess he threw me off balance with the A5 move. So I reacted with G4. I remember the shock on his face when I reacted with G4. Uh-huh. Now, this is the critical moment where I knew we were heading into an end game. Before he did bishop takes, before he did bishop takes, he didn't calculate that there will be a rook lift with devastating consequences. The problem with this rook lift is that I'm threatening his bishop, and at the same time, I'm about to go and threaten this other bishop that is here. So he had to improvise and find a way to unpin his queen. And all this brought us into the end game. Very smart, crafty defenses. He's a pawn up, even though the pawn is doubled, you know. Very smart and crafty defenses. I locked it because I had no other move. Now, this is the position of importance. In this position, I had the option of queen here. We're going into the end game head on. I had the option of queen here, right? Queen c7, attacking this. But then I was thinking there was going to be the move of queen to b8. Let me just make it queen here, queen to b8, and I didn't like how he could as well just take with this rook, or take with the knight, and then simply after this move check, he comes up. I didn't like the idea of how these pawns were looking, so because I was afraid of a move like, let's say I come here, you can simply just come here, then we just drag from there anyway. But what I went with was queen takes, and he took, and I offered him a draw. He rejected the draw. I offered him a draw again. He rejected the draw. And the rule says that once you offer your opponent draw 2 times, you don't have that luxury of offer again. So I had to play on check. He came up. I was thinking he was going to come outside, but I guess he had some plans on the king side. He had some plans on the king side for me. Came up. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This c pawn was the winner for me in this game, and I'm going to show how. We are in the end game. We're talking about domination, restriction, and opposition, but in this particular end game, I think the ideas were more of, they were just some very, very sharp tactics on display. He brought his rook here. I didn't like the idea of this pawn check, sacrificing it and all that. I knew this pawn was very weak. It was a backward pawn. I knew this pawn was coming to queen on a1. So, but the only luck I felt I had was pushing my own c pawn, which is where I felt the pressure was supposed to come from. Pushed my c pawn again. Nobody can attack this knight. So, what's there? He pushed his own pawn, which was a blunder anyway, because it now allows my knight to have this f5 square. You know, he, at this point, anything could as well just happen. You know, I had threats of c7, knight b5, you know, rook out, and then pawn queening and taking his rook. So he had to deal with all those threats. But I had no idea what he was doing on my king side. So, anyways, I blocked this. I took my time to block this because I didn't want nasty threats of g4 suffocating me on the king side, trying to find counterplay. And he now decided to go after this pawn. I told myself the pawn is dead anyway, so I checked him away because he was scared of a variation like knight check, rook check, and he has to just walk away, and then you see, and I'm queening. He was scared of that variation. So when I did knight f5, he had to go king h7, and then I pushed my c7 pawn. He took the pawn. I took the space he left behind. Now the idea is I'm threatening so many things at this point. His knight is kind of trapped here. He can't move it out for now. He can move it here. If he moves, I just capture it. I'm threatening bringing this knight to protect this pawn, free my rook. So many concepts here, so many ideas. So I saw the opportunity. I took the pawn. I saw the opportunity. I took another pawn with check. And then I checked. And then I just, so many tactics were in the offing. If he captures the pawn now, I simply pin him, right? And then if he decides to push the pawn, I simply just take. And I'm winning. Clear, right? So knight d6. He played knight d6 instead. Okay, no, let me take this back. Check. I attacked. So he attacked after king h7, rook a8. So he attacked my knight with knight. Okay, knight takes g5, check. He moved this king here. So I did rook a8 in this position. Yes, correct. Allowing him to take the pawn, which was untouchable. Knight came here. After the knight came here, he was trying to prevent me from queening. I just gobbled up the pawn because that pawn was too much of a threat to me. Yes. So I was threatening to gobble up another pawn anyway. So I attacked the knight. He moved away. I attacked the knight again. He moved away. Now, I just got one very crazy idea in my head. I felt this was the only person holding this square from queening. And then I did knight check, and the king moved close to the knight. And my next move was knight here, because I was removing the defender of this queening square while also defending this pawn. So sadly, he had to come there with his king, because that was the only move he could find. And then I took the knight. He had to take the pawn. So from this point on, I was coming for exchange. I was just ready to exchange everything. And the impossible happened in faraway Togo. And International Master Oluwafemi Balogun resigned in this position. I hope you've been able to learn a lot of things from Endgame chess play. Endgame is very rich. There are so many concepts that you can find if you are able to dig deep. For you to be good in Endgame, these are my closing remarks. You need to be able to understand that your minor pieces are very powerful, and you need to learn how to do what they call minor piece coordination. I love to use the rooks. I love to use the knight. I am lucky with understanding how king opposition works, as you can see from all the end games. But the very first end game I showed you was one of a psychological devastation that happened to me. So and that's something you should never let happen to you, because I believe that was something that also happened to International Master Femi Balogun in this particular game. He felt he was winning at some point. He was not willing to take a draw, and at the end of the day, he ended up losing. So because it was like I just swallowed something else, maybe stockfish or something, and started finding accurate tactics in the end game. And this tells you that there's a lot of tactics hidden in the end game as well. You have a lot of in-between moves. They call them Zwishen Zug. You have to find a way to put your opponent in Zugzwang, which is any move they play loses. And so thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope you all learned a lot of things from this Endgame Masterclass, and I'm open to questions. Thank you very much.